Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pro Peace Report. And this story today about Medicare expansion possibly getting left out of the reconciliation bill and how House progressives haven't been fighting for Medicare for all year. I mean, this story makes me furious. Like, I'll get more heated in this video than I do in other ones because it is like personal to me. Like, I have family that can't get access to healthcare easily because money is a big barrier. I've seen my mom, beg an ambulance to not take her to the hospital in an ambulance because it was going to cost her thousands of dollars. And so this story really hits home for me. So I'm going to talk about today the reconciliation bill, specifically the Medicare expansion element of it, how Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema are fighting against it, and how House progressives look like they're going to cave to House progressives and Bernie Sanders, but progressives in Congress look like they're going to cave to the pressure. And then I'm going to backtrack at the end of this video and talk about forced to vote and the March for Medicare-For-All. And when I confronted Cori Bush about forced to vote, how she responded to that. And it was not good. So stay tuned for that towards the end of the video. But let me start by pulling up this screen share right here. So, Democrats near deal on pared back spending bill. Here's what's likely in and out. Universal pre-K and money for elderly care are likely to be included in the bill, while free community college and expanded Medicare coverage are likely out. And so that's just crazy to leave out expanding Medicare during a pandemic for dental, hearing, and eyes. Those are not included in Medicare, basic Medicare plans. This bill would have, if it had its 3.5 trillion version, it would have included that. So we see here, the Democrats are hoping to strike a deal on a nearly $2 trillion social spending package that would include some key elements of President Joe Biden's agenda, like universal preschool, while others, like expanded Medicare coverage, appear destined for the cutting room floor. This is from NBC News. The still in flux plan lowers the price tag significantly from the originally proposed $3.5 trillion package to the 1.75 to 1.9 trillion range. It's all about compromise, Biden told the CNN town hall. I think we can get it there. And so I'm not going to go through the rest of this story here because it includes a lot of other stuff about the bill that I don't want to talk about in this story. But so why is it being left out? Well, let's look at this. It's from Jacobin magazine. Insurance companies are trying desperately to stop Medicare expansion in the budget reconciliation. The health insurance industry is spending big to halt efforts to expand Medicare benefits and running false ads claiming Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin are protecting seniors rather than privatizing Medicare. As Medicare Advantage continues to drive profits for the nation's major health insurance companies, the industry is lobbying against a provision in the reconciliation bill that could save the government nearly $150 billion over the next decade on a much-needed expansion of the country's Medicare program and prevent even more money from being funneled to private health insurance companies. Medicare Advantage, the privatized version of the National Health Insurance Program for people over the age of 65 and people with disability status, has become a cash cow for private health insurers. As small and medium-sized employers struggle to keep up with the skyrocketing costs of healthcare, private insurers are increasingly expanding into the Medicare Advantage market to buffer their profits. A provision being considered as part of the reconciliation bill would add dental, vision, and hearing benefits to Medicare, without including those benefits in the calculation of the rate at which the federal government reimburses Medicare Advantage plans. Doing so would cut the cost of expanding Medicare benefits by 41%. The vast majority of Medicare Advantage plans already provide dental, hearing, and vision benefits, but that hasn't stopped private insurers and their front group, the Better Medicare Alliance, from demanding more money from Congress and spending $3 million on advertising campaigns since September to try to ensure their reimbursement rates go up if those benefits are also added to traditional Medicare plans. So they're spending $3 million. $3 million to go to help the community. They're spending that because they don't want to have to pay more money for people's hearing, dental, and vision care. I mean, that's just ridiculous. These companies are rich, filthy stinking rich, and they don't want to have to pay to expand Medicare. So let's look, what does Pramila Jayapal say? She's the elected chair of the House Progressive Caucus. Pramila Jayapal says, while some in Congress float cuts to education, climate action, Medicare expansion, and more, the U.S. Senate is about to give the Pentagon $10 billion more than they even requested. We need to get our priorities in check. That's a good tweet. But as I'll show you, it's not consistent with what's probably going to happen. The stance that the House Progressives are taking in these negotiations and their stance on fighting for Medicare-For-All in general. Sanders, Jayapal say Medicare expansion in reconciliation package not negotiable. This is what the American people want, the socialist senator from Vermont insisted. As congressional progressives push back against right-wing Democrats seeking to shrink the size and scope of the Build Back Better Act, Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Pramila Jayapal on Tuesday insisted that expanded Medicare benefits must remain part of the $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation package. So this was on October 12th, they said this. And so now I'm going to play a few videos that'll kind of put this into perspective a little bit. So first we're going to play a video of Joe Biden and him talking about Medicare expansion in this reconciliation bill and how it's likely to be cut. Then we're going to show you Joe Manchin, the conservative Democrat who's throwing his weight around, his one representative, his one senator's weight around to basically get Medicare expansion out of the bill. And then we're going to show you the hypocrisy of what Pramila Jayapal said there. So first, let me start with this video of Biden at a CNN town hall.
One of the other things that Democrats are looking to do is to expand Medicare to include dental, vision, and hearing as well. Given all the negotiations that are going on, will all three of those still be covered?
That's a reach. And the reason why it's a reach, I think it's a good idea. And it's not that costly in relative terms, especially if we allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. But here's the thing. Mr. Manchin is opposed to that, as is, I think, Senator Sinema is as well.
Opposed to all of them?
Opposed to all three, because they don't want, he says he doesn't want to further burden Medicare.
I mean, do you hear that? All three. So Manchin and Sinema don't want hearing, vision, or dental included in this reconciliation bill at all. And they're willing to not vote for the bill because of that. That's the key. They're willing to not vote for the bill because they don't want to expand Medicare to more people. And that's exactly what the progressives should be doing. They should be a Manchin. They should be a Sinema. They vastly outnumber them if they would just use their leverage to do that. So now let's hear what Joe Manchin has to say.
I would ask my colleagues and all of the Senate to hit the pause button on the 3.5. Hit the pause button. Let's sit back. Let's see what happens. We've got so much on our plate. We really have an awful lot. I think that would be the prudent, wise thing to do. I know they're going to go nuts right now because it's probably being, what I just said is going to all my caucus in Washington.
Here they come.
But I'm thinking of it from the standpoint of where we are as a nation today, that we weren't here a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Everything has changed. And I don't know what the unknown is. I don't know what the future on this is. I know one thing, I want to be prepared for it. I want to be able to take care of our military that can defend us anywhere in the world if it's called upon. I want to make sure our economy is still robust. I want to make sure we're bringing manufacturing back and opportunities. I don't want to have debt over our head to where we basically can't service the debt that we have. All those things are very much concerning to me. And with all that hanging in limbo right now, Shelley will tell you, the 3.5, there's a lot of good stuff in there. There's things in there that she, at a certain, would like, that Democrats and Republicans can agree on. But it's not anything that we need immediately.
I mean, do you hear that? He's saying right there, he cares about the military. you know. And, there are some good things in this bill. To a degree, there's some good things, meaning he wants to scale back basically any of the good things. But he just swats away that 3.5 million. He just says, nope, 3.5 trillion off the table. That's too much money. I won't even go to that budget number at all. That's too much. And without adequate pushback from elected progressives, they dominate. People like Joe Manchin, the fact that he can publicly say that, he's coming out against Joe Biden's stance on this. And you hear how Joe Biden just, treats it like it's just a respectful disagreement. Whereas we know that if House progressives were to do that, it would be treated like treason. They would be blamed. But we need them to be willing to put their foot down and say, no, Medicare expansion needs to be in the bill. It should be Medicare-For-All. And so, but let's wait. Let's wait. I'm going to get to that all in the rest of this video. I have a lot to say about that. But let's see what Pramila Jayapal has to say. So we saw before that Sanders and Jayapal say Medicare expansion in the reconciliation package is not negotiable. You see here, not negotiable. But what is Pramila Jayapal saying now?
And I think that there are lots of possibilities on the table, some of which might be in the bill, some of which may not be. And so we just need to continue to look at the final agreement around that, because I don't think there is a final agreement there, but we're hopeful that we're going to get to a significant investment in climate.
How would you describe the president's role right now? Is he the closer, and did he talk to you about any deadlines that he wants if it's not October 31st, which of course the House Speaker has said?
The president is the inspirer, he is the closer, he is the convincer, the mediator in chief. He really is doing a phenomenal job.
But to follow up on that, what about deadlines? Did he talk about deadlines?
I mean, I think we're trying to get this, trying to get to a real close as quickly as possible.
But to follow up, did he sound frustrated with what's going on? Is he taking a tougher stance? Is he basically saying, get this done?
The president has been nothing but respectful of all that we're trying to accomplish, all that he's trying to accomplish in his Build Back Better agenda. And these conversations have been really great. They're really conversational. Others should say how they feel about this, but really conversational, really important listening sessions for him to hear from our members and for us to hear from him.
I mean, that's just painful to listen to. Biden, the inspirer, the closer, as he's willing to deprive the American people of health care during a pandemic that's killed 750,000 plus people. They claim to care so much about our health. Go get vaccinated. We care about you. We want you to be healthy and good. Vaccine mandates even. Let's mandate those vaccines. But when it comes to, what about mandating cancer care, free cancer care? What about mandating free health care for any other illness that could kill people and kills tons of people or bankrupt people in this healthcare system? Nope. They don't care about our health when it comes to that. And then you have the people who claim to be fighting for us, the people who claim to support Medicare-For-All. They're bowing down to Biden's Build Back Better agenda. They're bowing down to the conservative Democrats' positions. And that's exactly why they're getting rolled in these negotiations. That's exactly why the bill has gone from $3.5 trillion to $1.75 trillion now, basically cut in half. And Bernie was saying that they wanted more than that. They wanted like $5, $6, $10 trillion. But now we're all the way back to 1.75. And why does that happen? Because they don't put their foot down. They don't put their foot down and say, no, Medicare-For-All, non-negotiable. Now, you saw in that article I just showed you, they said that it was non-negotiable to have Medicare expansion not in this bill. But Pramila Jayapal here seems to make it sound like, we're willing to compromise. We're willing to go down to the 1.75 trillion. That might not include Medicare expansion because Joe Biden is over there saying, Joe Biden, the inspirer, the closer, he's over here saying that, well, Manchin and Sinema don't want it, so sorry guys, I don't think it's realistic. I don't think it's going to happen. And that's how they get us every single time. They tell us that something is not realistic, something the majority of Americans want. Medicare for All is supported by like 55, 60% of Americans, and even more than that in some polls. Medicare expansion for hearing, dental, and vision, I bet you that's more like 80% or 90% in polls. That shouldn't even be controversial. But because you have two senators who are willing to put their foot down and say no, we get rolled. And so now I want to connect this back. Now that we're seeing how gratuitous somebody like Pramila Jayapal is being to Joe Biden, as if he is the inspirer, he is our leader, he tells us what to do, and how that's not getting us this Medicare expansion, and how they should be like Joe Manchin, they should be like Kristen Sinema, but for Medicare for All. And that's what we've been saying this entire year. We're now in October 23rd. And we've been saying this since January. We've been saying this since forced to vote with Nancy Pelosi for Speaker of the House. We need a floor vote on Medicare for All. Medicare for All should have been the conversation for House progressives this entire year. They should not have bowed down to Biden's agenda. They should have fought for what the voters who voted for them want them to fight for. But let's listen. So what did AOC say a few years ago about forcing a vote on Medicare for All?
You know, in what you said earlier, too, I wanted to go back to what you said about our left party. We don't have a left party in the United States. The Democratic Party is not a left party. The Democratic Party is a center or center conservative party. We do not advocate for, we can't even get a floor vote on Medicare for All. Not even a floor vote that gets voted down. We can't even get a vote on it. So this is not a left party. There are left members inside the Democratic Party that are working to try to make that shift happen. But you're right, it does convey a certain sentiment about true believers. And there are a lot of true believers in that we can capitalism our way out of poverty in the Democratic Party. If anything, that's probably the majority.
Right.
And that's an area in which I agree with Dr. King, that assessment is flawed.
I mean, that was a good statement there. AOC said we can't even get a floor vote for Medicare for All. The Democratic Party is a center conservative party. I argue they're more conservative than that even. But that's what AOC was saying a few years ago, that we can't even get a floor vote on Medicare for All. Well, who is it who's preventing us from getting a floor vote on Medicare for All? It's Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is preventing us from getting a floor vote on Medicare for All. And they all voted for her for Speaker of the House. And now, let me pull up another screen here, not the March for Medicare for All just yet. I want to show you force the vote, how it could have worked. So what we were saying was that we needed just 15 representatives, fewer than 15 House representatives, to withhold their vote from Nancy Pelosi unless she puts Medicare for All up for a floor vote. And then, I don't think they should vote for Nancy Pelosi at all, personally. Her approval rating is like 30%. She knew that George Bush was doing waterboarding against people who were not charged with any crimes. And she didn't say anything. For years, she didn't say anything about it. She supported all sorts of austerity policies throughout her career. She used to believe in Medicare for All, now won't even put it up for a floor vote. But we needed 15 representatives who were willing to withhold their vote for Pelosi. And we had people like David Sirota saying, do you want Kevin McCarthy? Do you want Kevin McCarthy? Well, that would have been impossible unless House Democrats were willing to flip for Kevin McCarthy. That doesn't seem realistic. So 15 representatives. how many have endorsed Medicare for All? Well, here is Pramila Jayapal's Medicare for All Act of 2021. This bill has 117 co-sponsors. So out of those 117 House Democrats, we only needed 15 of them. That meant 102 of them could have sat it out and pretended like they weren't fighting for us. We needed just 15 of those. And they weren't willing to do it because they don't want to rock the boat of the Democratic Party. Oh, Biden won the election. We have to support Biden's agenda. That's who won the election. Well, you were elected for Medicare for All. We elected you there to fight for that. And you just folded to Nancy Pelosi. And a lot of people would say, oh, well, you know, if we forced the vote for Medicare for All, it would fail. And then what? Impeachment failed, right? But the Democrats still fought with everything they had for impeachment. Just because a bill fails doesn't mean it's done. You don't get like one vote and then the bill's gone forever. No, you do it again, 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 and again, and again. And, oh, well, they're going to paint us as obstructionists. They're going to say that us preventing Nancy Pelosi from being Speaker of the House, that's why nothing is getting done in this country. And then you turn it right back around on them and say, no, Nancy Pelosi is not letting a bill that's supported by 60% of Americans to have even just a floor vote. And so it's her fault. We have 750,000 people who are dead from this pandemic. They're murdering people by depriving us of health care. You go on all the airwaves and say that. AOC's got like 10 million followers on Twitter. All of corporate media covers them. Bernie is the most well-known and popular politician in the country. He could have done it. They could have done it. They wouldn't have gotten a media blackout. You're blocking the Speaker of the House from getting in. People were telling me on Twitter, oh, well, you know, the media would have completely blacked it out. Now, the media would have spun it in the pro-corporate direction. They would have spun it in the anti-Medicare for All direction. But that's why we needed a united front of all 117 of these people willing to go out there and fight their hearts out for Medicare for All, fight their hearts out for their constituents who are dying, who are going bankrupt, hundreds of thousands of people going bankrupt because they can't afford health care. And Medicare for All would get rid of the profit motive from health insurance entirely, not the entire health care industry, and I'll show you that later here, but they could have forced the vote. We could have had a whole national discussion about Medicare for All, and now when we're talking about Medicare expansion, they'd be talking about Medicare for All. So Medicare expansion would be the compromise from Medicare for All. If they had been fighting the entire time for Medicare for all year, it'd be much easier to get Medicare expansion. Biden said he supported the public option during the campaign, and now he's not even talking about it. Now it's not in the conversation at all. And you have people like Pramila Jayapal who introduced this Medicare for All bill. People like Pramila Jayapal touting Joe Biden as the inspirer-in-chief. Well, what did Joe Biden say earlier this year? Or not even this year, last year during the election. He said he would veto Medicare for All over its price tag. And so let's see about its price tag. Fact check. Medicare for All would save the U.S. trillions. Public option would leave millions uninsured, not garner savings. This was during the 2020 campaign when there was a debate between Medicare for All or public option, which was the huge debate. All the centrists, all the neoliberal Democrats, they came out and supported public option. Bernie was like the only one who supported single-payer Medicare for All. And now public option is not even in the conversation at all anymore. And it wasn't sufficient. It isn't sufficient at all. We still need Medicare for All. Joe Biden's going to veto it. And this study that found, so our healthcare spending is estimated to continue rising and will reach nearly $6 trillion by the year 2027. That means, according to the federal government, we will spend around $42.9 trillion on healthcare over the next decade if we maintain the status quo. A recent study by Yale found that Medicare for All would save around 68,000 lives a year while reducing U.S. healthcare spending by around 13% or $450 billion a year. Medicare for All spending would be approximately $37.8 trillion between 2017 and 2026. So that is a savings there. $37.8 trillion from $42.9 trillion. You save $5 trillion with Medicare for All. There was even a Koch-funded Mercatus Center study that found that Medicare for All would save around $2 trillion over a 10-year period. So even a conservative study is saying that Medicare for All would save money because you're getting rid of all the administrative fees of seeing whose health insurers covers what. That's like 20% of healthcare spending or something like that. Medicare for All gets rid of that entirely because everybody's on one Medicare for All government plan. Gets rid of the profit motive entirely. You don't have private insurance companies gouging people's illnesses to enrich themselves. Medicare for All would solve that problem. And Joe Biden wants to pretend like he's going to veto it over cost, over its price tag. And Pramila Jayapal calls him the inspirer-in-chief, the closer. And we're losing Medicare expansion in this reconciliation bill. I mean, it's beyond parody. Like, this is the natural result of incrementalism. This is the natural result of the Democratic Party strategy. This is why working within the Democratic Party, if this is what working within the Democratic Party means, if that's what that strategy means, that you don't fight for what you believe in, you fight for what the Democratic Party believes in, what their corporate donors believe in, what Joe Manchin believes in, what Kristen Sinema believes in, then we get rolled and we don't get the health care we need to save lives. And so I showed you here, Medicare for All Act has 117 co-sponsors. Well, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, how many co-sponsors did that have when it passed? It had 40. So we have almost 3 times as many co-sponsors for Medicare for All, and we can't even get a floor vote on it. Now, I know, I've heard this refutation, and this is a valid refutation of my point here. Well, Affordable Care Act was supported. It's a Romney policy. Mitt Romney did it in Massachusetts as a Republican. It's a Republican healthcare plan. So of course, the Democratic Party is going to put Affordable Care Act up for a vote and pass it. It was a conservative plan. Medicare for All is much more controversial. They don't want to touch it, as I've just shown you with Joe Biden and the lack of fight from House progressives. But the point is, they have the numbers to fight for this. It's not a question. They don't have the numbers to necessarily pass it, but they have the numbers to go out there and put up a fight so that we can see, okay, we get a floor vote. Now we see who voted against it, who was willing to put their neck on the line and tell their constituents, I'm not going to give you health care. Who's willing to do that? It's supported by like 80%, 90% of Democrats. It would be suicide, political suicide for those center-right conservative Democrats to do that. That's why you have to force the vote and make them call them on that bluff. So now let's pivot a little bit to the March for Medicare for All that happened this summer. So force the vote was back in January. They didn't force the vote. They all voted for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House. Then we saw them just fighting for Medicare expansion for a few months. The March for Medicare for All was planned this summer. And as you can see here, there were locations all across the country participating. I went to the one in Washington, D.C. We had about 200 people there or so. Everybody from Annie Chambers, the Black Panther, I was going to say former, but as Annie would say, once Black Panther, always Black Panther, all the way to like a Republican from Utah who supports Medicare for All. We had a wide range of speakers and a wide range of people protesting across the country. And none of the progressives in Congress spoke out about the March for Medicare for All. We were organizing this. I mean, I'm not going to say I organized it that much. I did some online activism for it. But people were organizing this march for months. There's no way that they didn't know about it. And then, as you'll see here in this video I had to show, Cori Bush decided to show up to the March for Medicare for All, a surprise appearance. No lead up, no advertising, no telling people to show up to fight for Medicare for All, but Cori Bush showed up. And at first, I thought that was a good thing. I was like, wow, that's nice. I'm happy that Cori Bush showed up. Then I decided, well, I'm going to go over and interview Cori Bush. Because I was already walking around. I interviewed maybe like 5 or 6 people. You can see it on my Twitter. Interviewing them, why did you show up to the march today? How do you feel about force the vote? And almost every person I interviewed said that they supported force the vote, that we need to fight really hard for Medicare for All, as hard as we possibly can. And I wish I had been recording when I talked to Cori Bush, because all you're going to see is my reaction afterwards. When I walked up to Cori Bush, I asked, "Can I interview you?" Cori Bush said, "Well, who are you?" And I was like, "Oh, my name's Kobe. I'm an independent journalist." She's like, "Oh," or she said, "Who do you do it with?" I said, "Just for myself. I do it all on my own, just for my own personal benefit, or not my benefit, but for everybody's benefit. I don't work for an organization. I just do this." And then Cori Bush said, "Okay, well, what do you want to ask me?" And I said, I told Cori, "I'll tell you the questions before I start recording so you can decide if you want to do this interview." Stupid me. I should have just been recording the whole time. I shouldn't have asked for permission to ask these questions. But Cori Bush had a security guard there. Cori Bush seemed apprehensive about interviewing me, so I wanted to reassure Cori Bush and make her feel comfortable with me interviewing her. So I told her, the first question is, why'd you show up to the March for Medicare for All today? Second question is, so let me think of how to word this. How did I say it? What do you think about the criticisms, the people who are saying that House progressives should use their leverage as a block to force a vote for Medicare for All? And Cori Bush said, "I'll answer your first question." This was off camera still, just answered it. "Oh, I'm at Medicare for All. I support Medicare for All because it's good. We need everybody to have health care." A good answer to the first question. And I was like, "Well, why won't you answer the second question?" And Cori said, "Oh, well, there's more that unites us than divides us. That's just a manufactured narrative. It's not really that big of a thing." And I'm like, not that big of a thing? Everybody out here supports it. That's literally most of these people at this march today say they support it. It is a real thing. It's not a manufactured narrative. But then, I kind of got frustrated, said a word or two with her, didn't get the recording of the interview at all because she didn't agree to let me record her on camera. But then I brushed it off. I'm like, whatever. That's what politicians do, right? Politicians are two-faced and don't answer properly on camera because they're scared about how they're going to be perceived by the public and how they answer a question. They don't want the controversy and stuff. And it's fucked up that that's how it is, but that's how it is. And so I gave up, and I go over, I just start recording the speeches that come after this. And so one of the speeches was from Savage Joy, who is another YouTube podcaster, left-wing podcaster. And you'll hear here, she talks about why force the vote was so personal to her because of her own medical problems. And I couldn't help but speak up and let everybody in attendance know, because I knew that Cori Bush was here at this event, and I knew that people were going to be like, "Wow, this is so amazing. I'm so happy that Cori Bush showed up today." But nobody would know what Cori Bush had said to me. And so I called Cori Bush out, and let's see it.
So one thing I haven't touched on is force the vote. I'm not sure if you all know what that is, and I know it's controversial because of the person whose channel it was on, which is clearly the most important part. So I was on as the disabled speaker, and it was the first time I ever went public with using my eyesight. And it was the first time I ever said the word disabled as to talking about myself. And it was the first time I said, I admitted that going through the trauma of going blind leaves you so many times that you hope you don't wake up in the morning. And I shared all that for the first time. And I poured my soul into that speech. And I did that speech because it was a plea. It was a plea to the people who I helped get elected, the people who I helped donate to, the people who I canvassed to. It was a plea for them to do one thing: withhold a vote for 10 minutes.
Cori Bush says it's manufactured dissent. She said it was manufactured dissent earlier today. I asked her how she felt about force the vote, and she said it was a manufactured division and that it's not real. Cori Bush, over there, I asked her this.
So, as someone 85% blind, who it just happened to last year, is it your permission or your stance that now is not the time? Because I can send you screenshots of my thousands of dollars in medical bill, and I can give you a very detailed account of the trauma I'm going through personally and many others. And I don't see her. I didn't know she was here, but if she is...
I mean, it makes me so upset. Like, it really does. Because it's like, you know, she's up there saying how she's gone 85% blind and how we were just asking them to do one thing, just fight for Medicare for all, force a vote on Medicare for all. It's not a manufactured problem. You can hear how personal it was to her. You can hear how personal it was to me. Many of the speakers who spoke that day talked about how personal it was to them. This is health care. This is a life or death issue. It's not a manufactured division. And I don't know why Cori said that. I'd really like to know someday why Cori said that. I don't know if she thinks that Jimmy Dore just made it up or something. But a lot of people feel that way. And like, I didn't go into this planning to yell out, to bird dog like that. That's what's called bird dogging, when you yell out at a public event at a politician. But the speaker right before had said something about how, you know, we need to stop playing nice with politicians. You know, we need to fight for what we believe in, stand up for ourselves, and started making me feel inspired. And I knew Cori was still there. And then she brings up force the vote. And I'm like, no, I have to do it. I have to be the one who says it. Because otherwise, it's just going to get overshadowed. We're not going to know. Cori Bush is going to get this PR win for showing up at this event while not actually fighting for what we believe in, while not actually fighting for us. And so I had to speak up and I had to yell out and say that. And a lot of people got angry at me online. People said, why are you attacking our allies? People called me racist for it. And it's just like, it's not racist to fight for healthcare. It's not racist to call out your politicians. It doesn't have anything to do with Cori Bush being black or being a woman or anything like that. I would have called out any politician who had treated me that way in the interview, treated everybody there who believed in force to vote, who believed in fighting for Medicare for all, not appeasing the Democratic Party, but fighting the Democratic Party to get us Medicare for all. And then, so actually after that, 2 or 3 weeks later was when Cori Bush had her Capitol sit-in, you know, when the benefits, when the, what's it called, the housing moratorium had expired and people were going to go homeless. And Cori Bush camped outside of the Capitol building trying to get extension on it. That was like 2 or 3 weeks later. I actually went to that too. I tried to interview Cori Bush there, but when me and Frank Analysis, when we tried to interview Cori Bush, her aides got in the way, stepped in the way, and said she's been really busy today. She's interviewed with a lot of people. You know, talk to us, and we'll do it another time. But luckily, Max Blumenthal from the Gray Zone, good news outlet, he did get to ask this question about force to vote and Medicare for all. And so let's see, how did it go when Max asked Cori Bush the same exact question that I had asked?
Well, that's where we are. And I heard, like last night, there was a lot less people. It's great to see so many more people. But I heard there was an intense debate about the role of the squad and why the squad didn't leverage its vote for the speaker for Medicare for all vote. And why the squad, I mean, with the margin so narrow in Congress, why the squad didn't because leverage its vote on the stimulus to get a $15 minimum wage? What?
No. So first, one thing that was said last night, which is something that's very true, and I wish we would have talked about that this was where your conversation was going, because we're talking about the rally for tonight. And I really would love to keep the conversation on what's happening.
I feel like it's all related to healthcare and
it absolutely is, but this is the thing. What was said last night is that this bill, Medicare for All, is not, there's no person on the squad whose bill that is. That is Bernie Sanders' bill in the Senate. It is Pramila Jayapal's bill in the House. It is not our bill. We cannot make that bill come to the floor. There is nothing that we can do legally to get the bill to the floor. We have
But Pelosi could have brought the bill to the floor.
We're good here, thank you.
Well,
I'm sorry, man. We're fine at this.
Why can't she answer the question?
We're here to talk about the eviction.
But I feel like it's all about healthcare.
Thank you.
No, really appreciate it.
Really appreciate your time.
We're here for a reason. It's about the moratorium.
Well, why is that? I can't ask about Medicare for All.
But the Congresswoman has slept 1 hour. She's done a lot of labor.
I'm trying to get people out here too.
I respect your work.
I'm trying to do the same thing you all are doing.
Thank you for being here.
But why can't she could just answer it and then I go away? I'm not trying to attack her or anything. I'm not trying to smear her.
We're happy to give you a contact and you can reach out.
But why is that issue, the Medicare for All vote, so like she was wrapping up her? But she was wrapping up her. I know she was wrapping up her answer. Then I was going to say thank you. Everybody come out.
I appreciate.
But why didn't you let her just wrap up her answer?
I really appreciate you. We're happy to give you a contact. You can feel free to reach out. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks. Okay, they wouldn't even let her finish her answer. I mean, I thought it was a perfectly fine explanation, and I was just going to be like, okay, thank you for answering.
Do you see what I'm talking about now with the whole fake politician dodge that even people like Cori Bush do on a question like Medicare for All? Oh, it's not my bill. It's Bernie's bill in the Senate. It's Pramila Jayapal's in the House. There's nothing we could have done to bring it to the floor. Well, Pelosi could have used your leverage against Pelosi to get her to. Oh, no, we're done here. We're done here, guys. Nope, can't talk about that. I mean, that is the way I got treated. When I tried to interview Cori Bush, she was only willing to answer the question that was not about forcing the vote for Medicare for All. I mean, that is exactly the problem. And it's not even just the fact that they didn't fight for it in the first place. It's the fact that they are smearing us who were supportive of that, as if our priorities don't matter, as if Medicare for All doesn't matter, as if they can't do more to fight for it. And you see, their narratives, the things that they say, can influence a lot of people and a lot of politicians. They can speak up fiercer for Medicare for All. They can call out the other people in their party who don't support Medicare for All. But you know why they don't? It's party unity. They believe in this concept of party unity that says we have to be respectful to people in our party. They're on our team. We don't want to alienate our team. But they should be on the American people's team. The American people want Medicare for All. People are dying because of this. They say, oh, no, this is off topic. We're here for the eviction moratorium. We can't talk about Medicare for All. What do you mean? They're all interconnected, all of these problems. I felt vindicated when I saw that interview with Max and Cori, because it was like, there. Now there's at least a video evidence of somebody asking the same question that I asked and getting the same answer that I had gotten. I mean, it's infuriating. But now I'm just going to pivot once more. So we're going to talk about, we talked about Medicare for All. So I started off this video by talking about Medicare expansion. Then I moved into Medicare for All. Now we're going to move into what's the Green Party's stance on this. We talked about the Democratic Party, talked about the progressives in the Democratic Party. But what do the Greens believe when it comes to healthcare? And so I'm going to show you now Howie Hawkins, the 2020 Green Party presidential nominee. What was his healthcare proposal? So Medicare for All is a community-controlled national health service. There's a distinct difference between Medicare for All and an NHS like the UK has, and not exactly like theirs. There's a lot of privatization efforts happening there, too. The United States has a growing health crisis. Almost 30 million people have no health insurance, and another 86 million are underinsured. So that's 100 million plus Americans who don't have adequate health insurance. meaning they have inadequate health insurance or can't afford the copays and deductibles required before their insurance coverage kicks in. I want to skip down a little bit to here. Let's see. The Hawkins healthcare plan outlined below treats healthcare as a human right and a public good. It starts by immediately implementing national health insurance, what is commonly called today a single-payer, improved Medicare for all. In the second phase, it builds out a national health service where healthcare facilities are publicly owned, healthcare workers are salaried, and the system is governed by community boards elected by the public, 2/3 of the seats, and healthcare workers with 1/3 of the seats. The second phase conducts a national assessment of unmet healthcare needs, develops a plan to meet those needs, implements the plan, and converts the system to a fully public and democratically run healthcare service. So we don't need to read the rest of it. That's the key distinction between what's the Democratic Party, what's the furthest left you can get in the Democratic Party is Medicare for all, and even that's lukewarm now, as I've shown you throughout this video. But then the Green, you juxtapose that with the Green Party stance, which is, no, we don't only want to nationalize health insurance. We want to nationalize the healthcare facilities. So the doctors, the nurses, the hospitals, those should also be publicly run, not for profit. And they should be democratically operated by the public and the workers. See, that's the extra left-wing step that we need to take overall, because even after we get Medicare for all, there will still be the problem of the profit motive in other elements of the healthcare system. We need to be getting rid of the profit motive entirely from all of the healthcare system. And Howie Hawkins was, and I actually don't know what the PSL, Gloria La Riva's stance was on this. I don't know if hers stance was the same, so I can't speak to that. But Howie Hawkins was one of the only people who was willing to take that extra step and say, no, we don't just need Medicare for all. We need the National Health Service, an NHS. That's the difference between maybe a neoliberal solution, and I wouldn't call Medicare for all neoliberal. I do think there's socialist elements to it because you're getting rid of the profit motive entirely. You're getting rid of the health insurance industry entirely. So it is a socialist idea, but it doesn't go all the way. And Howie Hawkins' plan was going to take that extra step. And so let's see, one last thing, one last source here, and then I have another video to finish with. Ralph Nader, so he was the 2000 Green Party presidential nominee. So he says here, for 40 years, whether under Democratic or Republican control, federal antitrust authorities allowed scores of hospital mergers. Today, hospitals are overwhelmed with COVID-19 cases and don't have enough beds. In 1975, there were 1.465 million beds. In 2015, there were only 897,000 beds with a larger population. Explanations needed. So that's a decrease of about 500,000 hospital beds over the course of 40 years. Even though the population went up, our hospital beds are going down because hospitals are merging because they can't make ends meet, and capitalism inherently creates monopolies, right? And so it's creating monopolies in the healthcare facility industry, in the hospitals. And so that's why even if we get Medicare for all, which gets rid of the profit motive from health insurance, it doesn't take that extra step of getting rid of the profit motive in hospitals. These hospitals should be publicly operated and democratically controlled by the people, not by the executives, not by a handful of small capitalists, no, controlled by the people. And that's why socialism and communism are more democratic than capitalism, because capitalism empowers the capitalists, the people who control the means of production, people who control the hospitals. And then you have here a socialist solution from Howie Hawkins that nationalizes the industry entirely. And that's what we need. And so to finish, I know this has been a kind of long episode. I'm happy to anybody who stayed and listened to this. This is a really serious topic to me. Healthcare is like one of my top priorities. I don't talk about it enough. But now I'm going to show you a clip from Bad Faith podcast by Brianna Joy Gray. Love her work so much. And I think it really speaks to these problems within the Democratic Party and who controls the Democratic Party. It's not us.
I don't really understand how anybody who just sort of takes a cursory look at Democratic policymaking over the last several decades, I don't understand how anybody could reasonably conclude, even now at this point where we've seen movement left, that it's liberals and progressives who are in the driver's seat of the party at a moment where it's looking like it's going to be an uphill climb to even do lowering the price of prescription drugs in reconciliation, where the climate provisions of the reconciliation bill are being gutted as we speak, when there's the voting rights legislation is being held up. There's no help whatsoever of gun control bill passing this Congress. When the Biden administration, you can't blame this on Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, is dragging its feet on executive immigration policy.
Canceling student debt.
Canceling student debt. So to say that like white liberals, even now, are running the show here and determining how people perceive the Democratic Party, I think is kind of preposterous.
I think it's actually defensible in very specific terms. In Shore's view, those ideological self-identifications, whether you identify as liberal, moderate, or conservative, to the extent that they do track real policy preferences, are really about social issues kind of exclusively, so that within the Democratic Party you have a lot of voters or you have like a significant minority, of voters who are reactionary on LGBT rights, abortion, etc., and the party's, positioning in the way that they govern in blue states where they have total control does generally affirm white liberal opinion on those issues.
So are they defending the police? I don't think it's trivial that the Biden administration's response, and I think the response of a lot of Democratic politicians, has been not to cut funding from the police, that kind of fizzled and evaporated, but to substantively reinforce the police. In reality, you see a lot of moderation, not just at the national level on something like policing, on LGBT rights, on immigration, but I think even at the state and local level.
I mean, it's not the left who controls the Democratic Party and its priorities. And I know he says white liberals there, and I guess that is distinctly different from the left. As the second guy had said, white liberals, the ones who care more about social issues and things like that, they do have a good voice when it comes to social issues within the Democratic Party. But when it comes to who's actually helping the decisions be made, I mean, the first guy, and at the end, he brought up a great point that, they backpedaled from defund the police entirely. And that's something that even white liberals, I don't think, care about that much. Defund the police was a black leftist priority. Defund the police, reinvest in communities. And we saw backpedaling from the squad on that, with funding for Capitol Police passing by one vote, and AOC could have been the deciding vote, would have tied it, and then instead abstained from the vote, and it passed. And so it's the centrists, or not even the centrists, I don't even want to call them centrists, it's the conservatives in the Democratic Party who are driving the conversation. I wanted to play that video at the end because it really wraps up everything I've been saying here, where you have somebody like Joe Manchin who's willing to put his foot down and say, no, $3.5 trillion, that's ridiculous. That's a non-starter. We need to sit back and really think about this, guys. That's a lot of money. We need to fund our military. That's the type of thing that Joe Manchin says. He is uncompromising in his belief on that. And what happens because he's uncompromising on his belief on that? He wins. Because Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema are uncompromising in their conservative Democrat beliefs and their health insurance funded, coal industry funded beliefs, they win in these negotiations. Whereas so let's imagine an alternate reality where instead of Pramila Jayapal saying that Joe Biden is the inspirer and he's the closer, and we trust him, we love his agenda, instead of glowingly speaking about Joe Biden that way, imagine, okay, let's even backpedal to force the vote. Imagine if they forced the vote, it failed, but they fought their hearts out for Medicare for All. And then they spent the past 10 months continuing to fight their hearts out for Medicare for All. In these negotiations, that interview that Pramila Jayapal gave, if she came out and reiterated how we are trying so hard for Medicare for All, we've already compromised. Medicare expansion was the compromise. You know, it's not like Bernie and Jayapal had said, it's non-negotiable. This needs to be in that bill. They should have been fighting for Medicare for All this entire time. And this is why, because they appease power, because they believe one thing personally, but then when it comes to their public outreach, when it comes to their PR, they are Democrats. They are Biden Democrats. Wholeheartedly, they make it sound. Even when they say, oh, well, we wanted more than that, but it's okay, we'll settle for the $2 trillion. That's not how you use your leverage in politics. Joe Biden or Joe Manchin is using his leverage in politics effectively for conservative causes. 117 House progressives who should be doing the exact same thing for left priorities. This is why they're not left. They're not left. They are neoliberals, just like they claim. The neoliberals they claim to oppose when it comes to election time, they claim to have differences of opinions with. For party unity, they act like them and they support their neoliberal agenda. If America had a multi-party system, let's imagine another alternate scenario where there's Greens in Congress, where these 117 Medicare for All co-sponsors are Green Party members. Do you think they would be speaking so glowingly about Joe Biden? No, because they're not in the same party. There's no reason to have to do that. You know, they can disregard party unity. Now, there is still the need for compromise, right? If you're in electoralism and you've put your foot down, said no, Joe Biden's put his foot down, said no, nothing's happening, at a certain point, there might be a compromise. But you can say your piece. You can say what you really believe. You can represent the constituents who brought you there in the first place. But we need to be getting rid of people who don't fight for us. Even people who claim to be our allies, if they don't fight for us, primary them. I don't even believe in primarying. I believe in running a third-party candidate against them. I'm done with the Democratic Party. They've shown me for years, but this year especially, they're just confirming everything I've believed about the Democratic Party, that when push comes to shove, they appease power. When push comes to shove, they don't represent us, they represent the corporations. And we can't keep letting that happen like this. We can't. We need to demand Medicare for all. We need to demand our politicians fight for Medicare for all with the same sense of urgency that activists in the streets have been fighting for Medicare for all for decades. Nancy Pelosi used to support Medicare for all. Now she won't even have a floor vote.